Resident Evil 2, the iconic sequel that redefined survival horror, first launched for the PlayStation in 1998. Over the years, this classic has been ported to numerous platforms, including 2 different versions for PC. Most recently, it was re-released on GOG.com, and with so many options available, including emulation, which one's the best for PC players today? In this video, we're going to explore them all and find out.
Head to the police station. It'll be a lot safer.
Let's start by looking at the original version of the game, the PlayStation version emulated on Duckstation. Resident Evil 2 was first developed for the PS1 and released in 1998, followed later the same year by the DualShock version. The DualShock version added support for the DualShock controller, although it still uses the same tank controls, and introduced extra content like the Extreme Battle Mode and a Rookie difficulty option, making it a more feature-rich release. When running on Duckstation, the game emulates very well, with no major audio or visual glitches. Like the original hardware, the game is limited to 30 FPS and the FMVs are compressed with a low resolution, which was the standard for the era. However, Duckstation offers some great enhancements. One standout feature is PGXP, which fixes the low precision wobbling and texture warping that was common in PS1 games, making the visuals appear much more stable and polished. Duckstation also provides multiple ways to customize the visual presentation. You can upscale the game to higher resolutions such as 4K, or stick to the original native resolution with integer scaling for a more authentic retro feel. Adding a CRT filter is another great option if you want to replicate the look of playing on old-school TV. One downside, though, is that some of the background textures show noticeable compression artifacts, which can't be improved without using mods or texture packs, neither of which I've found good examples of for Resident Evil 2 on Duckstation. The game's audio quality is excellent and holds up well, especially compared to the other versions we'll be looking at.
It's good to see you're still among the living.
However, there are some inherent limitations from the original PS1 release. For example, there's a brief loading pause between screen transitions and before some cutscene dialogue begins, which is a result of the way the PS1 reads data from the disc. However, even Duckstation can't bypass this. Unlike Resident Evil 1, which can run faster with some settings tweaks, the same tweaks cause glitches and freezes on Resident Evil 2. If you want to know what those tweaks are, check out my video on Resident Evil 1, the link is in the description. Additionally, the PS1 version doesn't allow you to skip the door opening animations between rooms, which can make traversal feel slow compared to some of the other versions. Now there are a couple of important settings to keep in mind when using Duckstation. First, you'll need to set the aspect ratio setting to pixel aspect ratio 1:1 and enable the crop all borders option. Without these adjustments, the game will display in the wrong aspect ratio. Overall, emulating the PS1 version of Resident Evil 2 on Duckstation offers a solid experience. It's not perfect. Things like FMV quality, loading pauses, background texture artifacts, and unskippable door animations are limitations of the original. But Duckstation's enhancements, such as PGXP and the visual customization options, make it a great way to revisit this survival horror classic. Next, let's take a look at the Nintendo 64 version of Resident Evil 2 running on the Mupen 64 Plus emulator. This version is widely regarded as one of the most technically impressive ports of all time, condensing the original 2CD PlayStation game into a single 64 MB cartridge. However, achieving this feat came with several compromises, as we'll see shortly. One of the unique aspects of the N64 port is its exclusive content. It features unique unlockable costumes, true analog controls, alternative blood color options, and a set of lore-expanding items called X-Files, which provide additional backstory connecting Resident Evil 2 to other games in the series. These additions make it a distinctive version worth exploring, even with its drawbacks. Speaking of drawbacks, let's address the visuals and performance. The game is limited to 30 FPS just like the PlayStation version, and it doesn't allow you to skip the door opening animations either. The background textures are roughly the same resolution as on PlayStation, but they're filtered on the N64, giving them a noticeably blurrier appearance. Character textures are also lower in resolution and filtered, resulting in a softer, less detailed look. Leon's textures in particular appear quite different from other versions. Even the UI and menus is affected by filtering and scaling artifacts, especially when playing in high resolution. Mupen 64 does allow you to upscale the game to high resolutions, but this doesn't fully compensate for the graphical limitations. Particle effects, for instance, look washed out and don't reach the proper brightness, which detracts from the atmosphere of the game. And while the emulator handles most of the game well, there are some significant issues. There's a bug that causes the screen to flash with garbage during the brief loading pauses between screen transitions, something that happens every time you change areas, and it quickly becomes very annoying. Worse still, there's a major glitch during one of the basement cutscenes where the characters become invisible, which can be quite immersion breaking. The audio and FMVs are also the weakest of any version. The FMVs are highly compressed and of the absolute worst quality compared to other ports, while audio suffers from heavy compression as well, leaving it a step down from the PlayStation version. Take a listen.
It's good to see you're still among the living. It's good to see you're still among the living.
While Mupen 64 Plus is not the only N64 emulator capable of running this game, I chose it because it's one of the more accurate options that also offers graphical enhancements. Still, the Nintendo 64 version's compromises and the bugs on the emulator make it a less than ideal way to experience Resident Evil 2. However, if you're curious about its unique content or the impressive technical achievement of fitting the game into a cartridge, it's worth checking out. Just be prepared for the drawbacks. Next up is the Dreamcast version of Resident Evil 2, which will be running on the Flycast emulator. In terms of content, this version is quite similar to the DualShock version from the PlayStation, but with one noticeable addition: a gallery mode that lets you view concept art and some other assets. Performance-wise, the game is limited to 30 FPS, just like the other versions, and it doesn't let you skip the door opening animations between rooms. Flycast allows you to upscale the game to higher resolutions, which can make the visuals look quite sharp, but unfortunately, this version suffers from poor frame pacing and constant stuttering when emulated on Flycast. This is a significant issue, and there doesn't seem to be any way to resolve it with the settings. One of the standout aspects of the Dreamcast version is the quality of its FMVs. Among all of the console versions, this one has the highest FMV quality, with clearer visuals and no cropping to a wide aspect ratio unlike the others. The background textures also show noticeable improvements compared to the PlayStation version. They have better color data, which means less visible color banding, and they don't have the compression artifacts that are present in some of the PS1 textures. However, the game does have a slight red tint to the entire screen, which can make the visuals look a bit off compared to other versions. Audio quality is slightly worse than on PlayStation, though it's still fairly good overall.
It's good to see you're still among the living. It's good to see you're still among the living.
However, one strange drawback is that some areas are missing background music entirely, most notably the West Office, which affects the atmosphere of the game. That said, the loading pauses between screen transitions are still present, and there is seemingly no way to eliminate them. Overall, the Dreamcast version offers some of the best FMV and background visuals of any console release, but the poor frame pacing and stuttering on Flycast are significant drawbacks. Unfortunately, these performance problems make it hard to fully enjoy the game. Now, let's take a look at the Gamecube version of Resident Evil 2, running on the Dolphin emulator. In terms of content, this version is identical to the PlayStation DualShock version, so you'll get features like Extreme Battle Mode and Rookie difficulty, but no additional extras unique to this release. Performance-wise, the game is limited to 30 FPS just like the other versions, and it doesn't let you skip door opening animations unless you use gecko codes. The loading pause between screen transitions is present here as well, but it seems to be slightly shorter compared to the other versions, which is a small improvement. Dolphin also allows you to play the game at high resolutions and even enable per-pixel lighting, which can enhance the visuals slightly. However, there's an annoying upscaling artifact, a persistent horizontal line on the right side of the screen that appears when playing in high resolution and can't be removed without using a mod. More on that later. Visually, this version has its pros and cons. The FMV cutscenes are of better quality than the PlayStation version, but are still much lower in resolution than the Dreamcast version, and they're cropped. The background textures are the same as the PlayStation version, but they don't have any of the compression artifacts present in the PS1 release, which makes them look cleaner and more consistent overall. On the other hand, the character lighting system is different in this version and features more contrast. This can look great in some areas, but makes the characters appear a little too dark in others, like the basement. One downside of running this version of Dolphin is that the emulator displays the game in the wrong aspect ratio, and this issue can't really be fixed without using a custom Dolphin build. However, if you use the Seamless HD project, a fan-made mod for this game, you'll get a more polished experience. This mod adds AI upscaled and even some fully hand-redrawn textures to the game, making the backgrounds look significantly better. It also uses a custom Dolphin build that fixes the aspect ratio issue. That said, due to limitations in this version of the game, the FMV cutscenes don't see much improvement in quality, even with the Seamless HD project. In summary, the Gamecube version on Dolphin offers some unique enhancements, especially with the Seamless HD project, but also comes with its own set of drawbacks, like the upscaling artifact and the default aspect ratio issue. However, it remains a solid option to consider. Let's move on to the first PC version of Resident Evil 2, known as Resident Evil 2 Platinum, which was released in 1998. In terms of content, this version is identical to the PlayStation DualShock version, but with the addition of the Data Gallery mode from the Dreamcast version. One of the most notable differences in this version is that it allows you to skip the door opening in transitions, which is a feature that many will appreciate. Additionally, there are no loading pauses between screen transitions, making this version feel much smoother to play compared to console versions. However, the game is still limited to 30 FPS, so there is no improvement in performance over the original. Graphically, Resident Evil 2 Platinum runs in full screen at 640 by 480 resolution, with no option to change it. The FMV cutscenes are of pretty low quality, about the same as the PlayStation version, and the audio quality is also lacking. It's comparable to the Nintendo 64 version, which is a noticeable downgrade from the other releases.
It's good to see you're still among the living.
Like the PlayStation version, this version also suffers from low precision wobbling and texture warping. Interestingly, Ada Wong's textures in this version are different from those in the other releases, which is a curious detail. There are some additional drawbacks as well. Like the Dreamcast version, this version is missing some background music, such as in the West Office, which can detract from the atmosphere in certain areas. And unfortunately, Resident Evil 2 Platinum hasn't attracted much attention from the modding community over the years, so there aren't many mods available for it. That said, there's one thing to note. This version can be converted into the Biohazard 2 Sourcenext PC version, which is the next release we'll cover. The Sourcenext version is often considered to be the definitive PC release, offering numerous improvements over Resident Evil 2 Platinum. So, let's take a look at the Biohazard 2 Sourcenext version, a Japan-exclusive PC release from 2006, designed for Windows XP. While this version was never officially released outside of Japan, it's often regarded as the definitive PC version of Resident Evil 2, thanks to its enhancements and compatibility with mods. Like the earlier Platinum release, the Sourcenext version allows you to skip the door opening animations and has no loading pauses between screen transitions, making the gameplay feel seamless. The FMV cutscenes in this version are uncropped and of excellent quality, comparable to the Dreamcast version, which already has some of the best FMVs among all console releases. However, the gameplay remains locked to 30 FPS, consistent with other versions. Graphically, the game runs at 640 by 480 resolution full screen, like the Platinum release, but there's an odd quirk where it displays window borders as if it were running in windowed mode, which can be a little distracting. The character textures are filtered, giving them a blurry appearance compared to other versions. On the audio side, the quality is okay, better than the Platinum and Nintendo 64 versions, but not quite as good as the PlayStation original.
It's good to see you're still among the living.
Unfortunately, like the Platinum and Dreamcast versions, this release is missing some background music in areas like the West Office. What truly elevates the Sourcenext version, though, is its compatibility with the classic Rebirth mod. This mod not only translates the game into English, but also fixes numerous bugs, including the missing background music, and introduces modern features like high-resolution rendering. Additionally, Classic Rebirth includes an optional mod that upgrades the audio quality to match the PS1 version, further enhancing the experience.
It's good to see you're still among the living.
And for those who want to take the visuals to the next level, this version can also be paired with the Seamless HD project. When compared to the Dolphin version running the Seamless HD project, there are some notable differences. The Sourcenext version boasts far superior FMV quality, while the gameplay is also smoother as it avoids the loading pauses seen in the Dolphin version. Additionally, some textures like the umbrella logo in the intro sequence are properly upscaled in this version, whereas they remain untouched in Dolphin's implementation. All in all, with Classic Rebirth and Seamless HD, the Sourcenext version stands out as arguably the best way to play Resident Evil 2 on PC, offering a near-perfect combination of quality, content, and enhancements. Finally, let's talk about the 2024 release of Resident Evil 2 on GOG.com. This version is based on the Platinum release, but with a few fixes and adjustments to improve the experience. Like the Platinum version, it runs at 30 FPS and features no loading pauses between screen transitions, keeping the gameplay feeling smooth. One of the key updates in this release is the new renderer. The GOG version no longer suffers from the low precision wobble and texture warping that plagued the Platinum version. However, this new renderer does introduce texture filtering on character models, which gives them a slightly blurry appearance, akin to the filtered textures in the unmodded Source version. On the plus side, this release is one of the few versions that supports integer scaling, which helps preserve the pixel-perfect look when playing on high-resolution displays. FMV cutscenes, however, are a bit of a letdown here. Despite the improvements in the game's rendering, the quality of the FMVs in the GOG version is very low, surprisingly even lower than the Platinum version it's based on. The audio quality is on par with the Sourcenext version in its unmodded state, which is decent but not as crisp as the original PlayStation version. As with the Platinum release, the GOG version is missing some background music, like in the West Office, which is a problem on every PC release. However, it's worth noting that the GOG version can also be converted to the Biohazard 2 Sourcenext PC version using mods, which, when used with the Classic Rebirth mod, can fix all of the issues as mentioned before. All in all, the GOG version itself is a solid option for those who want an easily accessible version of the game without dealing with the quirks of emulation. Still, it doesn't quite match the visual or audio quality of some of the other versions, so it may not be the definitive way to play, especially if you're looking for the best FMVs and textures. Now, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, or just love punishing yourself, there's always the option of emulating the Game.com version of Resident Evil 2 on MAME. Yes, you heard that right, the Game.com version. For those of you who don't know, the Game.com was a handheld console released in 1997, infamous for its terrible hardware. We're talking about a 16-bit processor, a display that could barely handle a few colors, and an overall experience that was more of an exercise in frustration than actual gameplay. Emulating it on MAME? Oh, it's an experience, if you can even call it that. The graphics, well, there's something, at least. With the mind-blowing resolution of 200 by 160, it's hard to even tell what's happening on screen. And the audio? Just terrible. And if you think the Game.com was bad on the original hardware, just wait until you see it emulated on a 4K screen. But hey, if you've ever dreamed of experiencing Resident Evil 2 in the most raw, unpolished form possible, MAME's got you covered. Just don't expect to enjoy it, unless of course you're into self-inflicted gaming torture. In conclusion, when it comes to experiencing Resident Evil 2 on PC, the Biohazard 2 Sourcenext version truly stands out as the best overall option. With its excellent FMVs, smooth gameplay, and compatibility with mods like Classic Rebirth and Seamless HD, it offers the most refined experience for those who want the best of both quality and content. This version takes full advantage of modern enhancements, making it arguably the definitive way to play Resident Evil 2 on PC. That said, other versions still have their value. If you're looking for a more retro experience, emulating the PlayStation version on Duckstation is a solid choice. The many settings available allow for multiple retro-related presentation styles. And for those seeking a more accessible option, the 2024 GOG release is a great alternative. offering a quick and easy way to play without the complexities of emulation or mods, though it's not without its shortcomings, especially in FMV quality. Still, it can also be converted to the Sourcenext version to take advantage of all the mods. Ultimately, it comes down to what you value most in your Resident Evil 2 experience. Whether you want the best visuals, the most authentic retro vibe, or an easy-to-access version, there's an option for everyone. But for the most complete and polished version, the Sourcenext release with mods is your go-to. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more. I'll be looking at Resident Evil 3 as well soon, so stay tuned for that. And if you want to get in touch with me, follow me on X. Also, I've recently created a Patreon, so if you want to support my work and see more of these videos, please check it out. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.